Okay, we are going to be talking about cameras within Vizrt T5. And here you can see that I have my Vizrt T5 interface open. And if we come to our workspaces, and I'm just using the default workspace here. And within this workspace, we have a tab in the upper right for cameras. And you can see if when we click on that we have 1 through 16. So we're going to go through and review this and how to work with these cameras within a scene. First, I'm going to open up a scene, so I'm going to go into my asset view and find a scene here. I have a virtual set that we are building, and we need to block out some camera angles for this virtual set. Somewhat simplified right now, but we are going to be tracking this little object right up here. This is where we plan to place the talent, and we'll use the cameras here to move around our scene. A camera actually shows the Vizrt scene, so anytime we have a Vizrt scene open, we are actually looking through a camera here. And any camera within Vizrt can be controlled much like any real camera itself. The first thing that we want to talk about here is our camera buttons. So within our scene editor window, we have this little number box up in the upper left, and when we click on it, it reveals a whole bunch of other numbers. So we have 1 through 16, and then we have a front, back, left, right, top, and a bottom. Now the 1 through 16 corresponds through the cameras over here. So if we switch to camera 2, it's going to automatically highlight this camera over here within the camera settings in camera 2. Vice versa, if we select a camera over here within the camera settings, it's going to select and make that button active up here in the upper right. So at any time, if we want to change our camera angles, we can just come up and change or select which camera we want in this little number in the upper left, and or you could come over here and change the cameras. Now you notice as we switch through 1, 2, 3, and then 4, each one is a little bit different, and 5 through 16 are actually in the pretty much the exact same spot, so you may not notice too much of a difference when you switch between these. But we're going to be working with these cameras, and we're actually going to cut between cameras to show you how each one of these works. So number one, we're going to work with our first camera here, and we can select it up here in our little number, and it's highlighted over here. First, it tells you what camera it is. So it has a little icon here. It says camera 1. We can also rename this camera if we want as well. And we'll just type in camera 1 for a name here. Real original, I know. But if you had a certain camera type or lens on there that you wanted to mark, you could certainly put that there. To the right of the name, we have a little lock icon. So we can lock it and unlock this camera. Now when it's unlocked, if we were to come into another view, such as our top view, and the camera is locked, and we can zoom out by holding X and using our middle mouse button. When the camera is unlocked, we'll be able to grab the camera within the scene here and grab it. And or we could use these settings in here. But when the camera is locked, we will no longer be able to come into the scene and move it around, but we can still use these parameters within the camera setting itself. So whether you want to lock it or unlock it, it's up to you, but having it locked means no one can come into the scene and actually move that camera around. Next to the lock button is the remote or the control button. So if you're going to receive tracking data from a real camera, you would set it to the remote setting here, and if we're just going to use it as a regular camera and not receive tracking data, we are going to use it as the editor here. So we're going to use all of our cameras within the editor here. We're not going to actually set up a camera tracking within this scene. Next to that, there is a visualization, and if you click on it, it gives you 3 drop downs here. Number 1 is off. So notice when we turn that off, we would no longer see the camera within our scene here. And if we turn that on, we will now see the orange outline. So for any camera that you want to see in the viewport as an orange icon, make sure that your little eyeball is on. If it's off, you won't be seeing it. If it's on, you'll be able to see it within the editor. Now there's also an infinite setting, and this is shown with infinite lines. So if you have a scope of a camera that is far away, far away, that will be good to use. For now, we are going to set our cameras to on. And then next to that, we have our view type. We have perspective, we have orthogonal, and then we have window. So if I switch back to our first view here and we go into our perspective, represents a real camera view, or orthogonal view. Here is more of a flat 2D view. And then we also have a window view as well. We are going to use perspective view for this. And then next to that, we have a copy and we have a paste parameter. So we could actually copy camera position and camera tracking and then paste it into another camera. So within our camera, we're on camera 1 here, and within our camera, we can change settings within it. So we have our X position here, and if we position our X position here, you can see that we are moving the camera left and right. And if we go into the top view here, we can kind of see what's happening with the camera here. It's moving the whole camera, and it's not necessarily tracking what we need to track using this position X. So that's the position X, and we'll go back into our camera view, and then we have a position Y, which moves our camera up and down. And if we go into our left view and or our right view, we'll be able to see this. So we can move our camera up and can see what that is doing to the camera and how it affects the scene. And then finally, we have our Z position. So if we go back into our camera view here, Z position moves the camera forward, and it can move it backwards as well. And again, if we go into the top and or left view, you can see that it's moving it forward in the Z when we adjust it, and then we can adjust it the other way and move it back. We'll jump back into our camera view, and another option we have here that we can change is our direction. So you can see what's happening here as we use our pan within our number 1 camera. If we go into the top and or one of the other views and use the pan, now you can see what the pan is actually affecting the camera here. So it's not moving the whole camera, it's just panning the camera. Then we have tilt. So when we use the tilt, we are actually tilting the camera. And if we go into the left and or right view, we can see what the tilt does. So we can tilt it up and down, and that's what the tilt does to the camera. And then finally, we have a twist here, and we can twist the camera. So we can twist it left or right. And if we go into the top view and or left view, we'll be able to see this as well, maybe a little bit better on the left or the right view. So as we twist it, you can actually see that the camera is twisting there. And if we wanted to reset any of these, notice when we changed it, it changed the color to blue. You can just double click on it and it will reset it back to the original setting of that camera. Now below that, we have a direction tracking and also an orientation tracking, and we're going to cover that in a few minutes to set that up. There's also a relative position, and we have a relative position for X, Y, and Z. And the relative position sets the camera along the X, Y, and Z position relative to the real camera. So if we were to change this setting here, we add 15 or 19, it would add it to the position of that camera. And you can see how it resets here after we make a change. We can just add a few numbers to it and it will add it to the position of the camera. So if we needed to reset that, we could just hit the X and Y and it will reset it. Below the transform setting, there's also a lens setting. So we could come in and adjust the angle of the lens too. It's set to 45 by default, but if we wanted to shorten the angle of the lens, we could certainly decrease that and or increase it if we wanted. There's a center shift, which shifts the center of the X position and the center of the Y position. So this will shift the center of the lens on the Y and or the X position. And again, if we wanted to reset these to what they were, we just double click on the blue text, which means that it has been changed. And once you double click it, it goes back to the white text, letting you know that it's in its default position. So below the lens, there is a depth of field, and the focal plane here defines the distance between the camera and the objects which are in focus. And then the f-stop just sets the f-stop value relative to the aperture. And then below that, there is a setting for Viz Engine Renderer or Classic, just additional settings here for whichever one we are using. And just in case you didn't know, we are actually using the Viz Engine Renderer here within this scene, which means we need to use PBR materials for this. So below the depth of field, there's also a stereo setting. So if you're setting your scenes up in stereo view, you could use that setting. And then below that, there's one more setting for distortion. Now, every camera, 1 through 16, has those exact same settings. So if we open up camera 2, we have the exact same drop downs here that we can change on the parameters here. So all the cameras are going to have the same similar settings that we can adjust. So what else can we do with the camera besides just changing the position statically here? We can also keyframe just about every element within the camera itself. So if we wanted to start setting up the scene and creating some moving cameras, we'll do that. We will animate our first camera here. So what we want to do is we'll use two settings here, and we just want to kind of do a zoom in and or just kind of have the camera push in as well. And we can do that two ways. We can use the Z position, and or maybe we could use the angle of the lens for that. For this, we'll use the Z position. So I want to kind of start this camera zooming out. So I'm going to use the Z here just to zoom out. And I'm going to start it right there. And I can set a keyframe, and then I can move the camera in to where I want. So I'm just going to adjust the Z position right there. And if we wanted to adjust the angle a little bit too, maybe we could. And I'll just move it just a tiny bit, and we'll set a keyframe there. Now, we set a keyframe, but we don't see anything within the scene tree representing a camera. That means when we go into the stage here, we will have a couple of keyframes and our camera 1 set up here within our director. And I'm just going to zoom into the stage here. I will use my middle scroll mouse button to do that. And then if I want to navigate around the stage, I can hold that middle mouse button down, and I get these crosshairs and I can move it around. So here you can see that it's placed it in a director, which is called default by default. Then it says camera 1. And within that camera 1, we have a position keyframe right here. So we can click on this keyframe. It represents our Z position right here. If we needed to change that, we could. So if we could make a real-time adjustment right within the stage here, and it would automatically update that keyframe there. We have a zoom. So if we needed to readjust the zoom anywhere right along here, we could as well. If we just play our timeline here to the last keyframe, again, we can highlight it and then just make any additional changes to it right within the stage here. If you click on the individual keyframes, then you also have access to your spline editor down here. So if you wanted to adjust with the ease in and ease out of the animations, you have your handles here that you can adjust as well. So that's camera 1. Now we're going to use additional cameras to set up a scene here. So what I want to do is set up some keyframes to be able to switch cameras or cut to a different camera. So we have a director that was created automatically when we created this animation. If I right click on that director, we can come down here into this scene, and there's a setting there. It says current camera. We're going to click on that. And what that does is create another variable here that we can change our cameras. And here it says current camera. And if we click on this, it gives us a little value. And this value here says 1, and that represents camera 1. Now there's another keyframe here. If I click on that, it says value, and it says value 1 by default, but we can change this to camera 2. And that means when it hits this keyframe, it's now going to change to camera 2. So you can see as we land on that keyframe, there's the end of our animation, and now it switches to camera 2. So we're going to animate camera 2 now. So we can either click on this icon, our number icon in the upper left, or we could just come over to the camera and make sure that camera 2 is highlighted. So for camera 2, I want to move the position, and let's say I want to start it over here in our X position, and we'll set a keyframe. And then we want it to move on the X position over here. And we also want it to track or follow this icosahedron here that we have set up. So we just need to pan this or a little bit as well. So we'll adjust the pan so that it's kind of centered up here, and then we'll set keyframe. And once we do that, you can see that it created another animation down here with a set of keyframes. Our first animation here, we have a pan setting. And if we click on the pan, we could change the setting there if we need to within those keyframes itself. We also have a position. So as our animation here hits our current camera, it switches to camera 2, and now camera 2 is playing. Now we want to switch the camera again and add another camera. So we are going to copy this current camera keyframe. We'll hold down C on our keyboard and click and drag that keyframe, and we are going to click on it, and this time we're going to change that to value 3. And when it reaches here, we're going to now switch to camera 3, and camera 3 is going to have a new animation. So we're going to go ahead and click on camera 3, and here you can see that we named it prime. So maybe you have a prime lens and you want to make sure that you know that it's on this camera. It has a specific name. So we'll set up some position keyframes for camera 3, and we can just kind of do whatever. We'll use the position here. Maybe we'll start a little bit lower and start out. And we'll just set a keyframe there, and then wherever we want it to move to, we can. We'll move it up this time. And maybe we'll zoom in a little bit and then tilt the camera down as well. And then we'll set keyframe. And again, it made a whole new set of animations here. So we have our position that we can adjust, and we also have the tilt. And if we wanted to adjust any of these keyframes, you can grab each one individually and grab it. You can also grab the bar above it and just drag them together. So you can place them wherever you want. And once we just want to line up these keyframes so that when it does switch to camera 3, they're lined up. Okay, so let's play this. We'll play it so that we have our stage open, and we can kind of see what's going to happen here as the timeline plays. So we'll hit play, and you can see camera 1 zooms in. It's going to get here and switch to camera 2. And then it's going to switch to camera 3. And then we will add camera 4 in just a minute. We notice that we have these camera settings here. As it switches, it's showing us the cameras. If you want to not see them, you could come up into your camera settings here, and again we could turn these things off for each one of our cameras, and then we would not be seeing it within the scene. So now you can see that we don't see any camera. But if we want to see it, we're going to come back and turn the visibility on for each one of these. And now as we pan through, we can kind of see that it brings the cameras back. And since we have camera 1 highlighted, it's orange. Finally, what we want to do is talk about this tracking object. And I'm going to use camera 4 to set up a tracking object. Now camera 4 might have it's some different settings by default, so we're just going to reset all of our settings here on camera 4 to whatever they were by default, and we're just going to start blank. But instead of using the editor or the camera editor to make an animation, we are going to use what's called a tracking object. So I'm going to go into my plugins here. I'm going to choose any plugin, any geometry. I'm just going to use an icosahedron again. And we are going to use this plugin to move our camera. I'm going to use the top view here to do this. It's just a little bit easier for me to visualize. Now you can do this however you want. This using top view may not be the easiest way for you, but it helps me to see where the tracking object is going, and it will help us guide us the animation path using it this way. So here's our tracking object. It's highlighted here. It's this white thing with our bounding box is on. Within the scene, it gives us the handles, right? If your bounding box is off, you don't see it, but if you click it on, it will give you the little guide or the handles there. Now basically, I'm just want to drag this thing to where I want it to start, and I'm going to set a keyframe, and then I'm going to move it to where I want it to be next, and then I'm going to move it yet again to another place and set a keyframe, and then I'll move it just once more to set a keyframe. Now I'm going to go into the stage, and here you can see that we have our icosahedron position here, and I'm going to click on it. I'm going to highlight it, and since my bounding box is on, we now have our path here for this icosahedron, and that's why I wanted to do it in the top view, because now I get the handles here, and if I need to adjust any of these handles as far as the curve or speed or anything like that, it just makes it a little bit easier. I can just click and drag and move them this way. And for instance, if I didn't want that ending keyframe right there, I'm just going to move it out this way. I don't want it to go back so far. So it's an easy way to adjust keyframes when you're in a different view. So here's our animation. You can see that our icosahedron is just moving around our set there. If we go back into camera 1 and or camera 4, which we're using, you can see that we see nothing. We don't even see the icosahedron because it's behind the camera currently. What we want to do is go into the camera, and since we are working with camera 4, I want to use this icosahedron as the position tracking. So what we're going to do is take this group, and let me just move this window over a little bit so that we can see this container, and if it helps, I will rename this to camera track. We're going to go into our camera setting. We're going to take our camera track container and drag it right into that none box, and you can see that it changed our scene, and it also gives the name of the container within the camera track. Now, if we were to hit play from this, let's rewind a little bit, and here you can see our scene, our camera 4 is moving, but there's a problem. Let's go into the top and we'll see. Here's our camera 4. Let's turn on our visual here. We'll turn it on. Here's camera 4 now in the orange, and as you can see, as the camera is moving, it's fine, it's moving with the position, but it's not really following the talent that we need. So in that case, what we need to do is drag another container over. We'll open up camera 4, and this icosahedron right here that's within our set is actually what we want to track, and we're going to drag that into our direction tracking. So I'm going to take this container and drag that into our camera tracking. We'll grab the container by the name and drag it right into direction tracking, and then it says no name, and which equals our container name. We probably should have renamed that, and we'll say cam pause right there. We rename that, and then within our direction tracking it has cam pause right there. Now if we were to play camera 4, you can see that it's moving but it's also tracking this object, which we want it to. So if we go into the top view, you can see that the camera is attached to the icosahedron here, but it's also staying focused on this icosahedron in the middle of the set. So as the camera pans around, you can see that it's just staying focused on that one area there, which is what we want. Now finally, we want to copy this current scene and cut to camera 4. So here's our camera. So here is our current camera keyframe. Again, I'm going to copy that by holding down C and just clicking and dragging. I'm going to line up where my camera 4 starts. So we'll place that keyframe there, and we'll place our camera 4 keyframe there. And the timing or placement of keyframes is entirely up to you, where you want them, how fast you want them. Now you can tell that it's not going to cut right here because there is no bar between here. This keyframe and this keyframe are exactly the same, but once we change this keyframe to 4, you'll notice a little animation bar between there. So now it comes to this point, it's going to cut to camera 4, and our camera 4 animation should then pick up. So we're going to go back and start this into our number 1 camera. We're going to rewind our timeline. We'll just take that all the way back here. And why don't we just go in and turn all the cameras off so that we don't see any of the cameras within our scene. So I'll go into camera 1 and turn that off. I'll turn camera 2 off. We'll turn 3 off. And we'll turn 4 off. That's just meaning we're not actually turning them off. We're just turning off the visual representation within the scene. We're going to go play. It's going to start with camera 1 and zoom in. It's going to get and change to camera 2 where it pans. Now it's going to change to camera 3, and we have a tilt up a little bit, and then it's going to change to camera 4 where we are tracking the camera. And since we have keyframes, like I said, you can adjust the speed of each one of these keyframes by adjusting how fast or slow they are. Camera 4, since we do have that tracking object on there, if you wanted to get rid of it, you just hit the reset button right there, and it gets rid of that, and it gets rid of it for both when you hit the reset. And now there is no tracking attached to it. So that's some of the camera settings within Vizrt T5. Hope that helps. Thank you.